Her first love returned as the vampire king, then crashed her wedding. You belong to me. The autumn leaves crunched beneath Ilara's white heels as she stood before the full-length mirror in the bridal suite. Her wedding dress, a cascade of ivory silk and delicate lace, fit perfectly, just as it had during every fitting. Yet somehow it felt wrong. You look absolutely radiant, her maid of honor, Cecily, gushed, adjusting the veil for the 100th time. Thomas is going to lose his mind when he sees you. Ilara forced a smile, the same practiced one she'd perfected over the past year. Thomas was perfect, a successful architect, kind, dependable, with a good family and better prospects. He was everything her parents had hoped for, everything she'd convinced herself she needed after years of wild, reckless youth. Everything except the one thing that mattered. He wasn't Damien. She pushed the thought away as quickly as it surfaced, a reflex she'd developed over the 7 years since Damien Ashford had vanished from her life without a trace. It had been the autumn of her 21st year, when the world still felt infinite and love felt like magic. Earth to Ilara, Cecily waved a hand before her face. You're doing that thing again, that faraway look. Sorry, just wedding jitters. Completely normal. Now come on, we have 20 minutes before you walk down that aisle and become Mrs. Thomas Whitmore. The name settled over her like a shroud. Outside the country estate's window, the sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood orange. The ceremony would take place at dusk, as Thomas had insisted, something about the lighting being perfect for photographs. Ilara had agreed, as she agreed to most things, floating through the wedding planning like a ghost haunting her own life. She'd met Thomas at a charity function 2 years ago. He'd been charming, persistent, and most importantly, present. After Damien's disappearance after the sleepless nights and unanswered questions, Thomas's consistency had felt like an anchor. Her parents adored him, her friends approved, and she had convinced herself that comfort was enough. 5 minutes, a coordinator peeked in, clipboard in hand. Cecily squeezed her shoulder. I'll go take my place. Remember, slow steps, big smile, and don't lock your knees. Then Ilara was alone. She stared at her reflection, searching for the girl who'd once danced in thunderstorms and believed in forever. The girl who'd given her heart completely to a boy with storm-grey eyes and a smile that held secrets. Damien had been different from anyone she'd ever known, intense, mysterious, alive in a way that made everyone else seem like shadows. And then one October night he was simply gone. No goodbye, no explanation, no trace. She'd searched, of course, filed a missing person report, called his disconnected phone 1,000 times, driven to his empty apartment until the landlord threatened to call the police. His family, he'd said he had none. His friends, he'd always been evasive. It was as if Damien Ashford had never existed at all. Eventually she'd had to accept it. He'd left her. Maybe he'd never loved her at all. Maybe she'd been a fool. Miss Hartley, it's time. Her father appeared in the doorway, distinguished in his tuxedo, eyes glistening with unshed tears. You're a vision, sweetheart. She took his offered arm, letting him guide her toward the estate's grand hall. Through the open doors, she could see the gathered guests, the flower arrangements, the string quartet playing softly. Thomas stood at the altar, handsome and smiling, everything right on the surface. The music swelled, transitioning to the wedding march. This was it, the moment she'd step into her new life and close the door on the past forever. She took the first step. Then the lights went out. Not gradually, but all at once. The chandeliers, the candles, even the remaining sunlight seemed to dim as if someone had drawn a curtain across the world. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Her father's grip on her arm tightened. What the hell, someone muttered. A wind swept through the hall, though every window was closed. It carried the scent of rain and something else, something Ilara remembered in her bones, night-blooming jasmine and cedar, the scent of that last October with Damien. Then, through the darkness, she heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing on the marble floor. And a voice that turned her blood to ice and fire simultaneously. Stop the ceremony. The lights flickered back on, though dimmer than before, and there, standing in the centre of the aisle as if he'd materialised from shadow itself, was Damien Ashford. But not as she remembered him. He was devastating, that was the only word. 7 years should have changed him, softened him, but instead he looked carved from marble and midnight. His black suit was immaculate, his dark hair slightly longer, framing features that had always been handsome but now held an otherworldly quality. And his eyes, those storm-grey eyes she dreamed of, now held a faint, impossible silver luminescence. "Damien," her voice came out as barely a whisper. The hall erupted in confused murmurs. Thomas started down the aisle toward them, his face flushed with anger. "Who the hell are you? This is a private ceremony. Security." Damien didn't even glance at him. His eyes were locked on Ilara with an intensity that made her knees weak. "Ilara," he said, and her name on his lips was a prayer and a claim. "Forgive me, I never wanted to leave you, but I had no choice." "No choice," the words tumbled out, 7 years of pain and confusion sharpening them. "You disappeared, no word, no explanation, nothing, and now you show up at my wedding. Because I can't let you do this." He took a step closer, and several guests gasped and moved back, as if repelled by an invisible force. "I can't let you marry him when you belong to me." Thomas had reached them now, positioning himself between Ilara and the intruder. "Now listen here, you need to leave immediately before I have you arrested. I don't know what kind of history you think you have with my fiancé." Damien finally looked at Thomas, and something in that gaze made the other man stop mid-sentence and take an involuntary step back. "Your fiancée," Damien said softly, "is my mate. She has been since the moment we met, and I've come to claim what's mine." "Mate," Ilara's father stepped forward. "Now see here, young man." But Ilara raised a hand, silencing him. Despite everything, the shock, the anger, the fear, there was something else rising in her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. "Explain," she demanded, lifting her chin. "You have 60 seconds before I have you thrown out. Tell me why you left. Tell me where you've been. Tell me why I should believe a single word from your mouth." A sad smile crossed Damien's perfect features. 60 seconds won't be enough, but I'll try." He drew a breath he didn't seem to need. 7 years ago, I was still becoming what I am. I didn't know it would happen so fast, didn't know the transformation would take me. When I felt the change beginning, I left to protect you. Because Ilara, his voice dropped, intimate despite the 100 witnesses, I'm no longer human. I haven't been for 7 years. "This is insane," Thomas interjected. "He's clearly deranged. Someone call the police." But no one moved. They were all transfixed, caught in whatever strange spell had settled over the ceremony. "What are you saying?" Ilara whispered, though part of her already knew. The impossible luminescence in his eyes, the way the shadows seemed to cling to him, the sense of power that rolled off him in waves. Damien's eyes held hers. "I'm saying that I am the Vampire King of the Eastern Territories. I'm saying that for 7 years I've fought wars, consolidated power and built a kingdom, all so I could come back to you safely, so I could offer you not just my heart but a throne beside me." The words hung in the air like incense. Someone laughed nervously. Several people whispered "vampire" in tones of disbelief. Thomas looked like he might faint or attack, she couldn't tell which. But Ilara just stared at the man she'd loved and lost, seeing him clearly for the first time. The inhuman grace, the ageless quality to his features, the way he stood as if gravity itself obeyed him. "Prove it," she heard herself say. Damien smiled, and this time it showed teeth, elongated canines that definitely hadn't been there 7 years ago. Then, before anyone could scream, he moved. One moment he stood 5 feet away. The next he was before her, having crossed the distance faster than the eye could follow. He took her hand gently, his skin cool but not cold, and raised it to his lips. "I have loved you through every dark night," he murmured against her skin. "I have thought of you with every breath I no longer need to take. I left you to keep you safe, and I've returned because an eternity without you is no existence at all." His words wrapped around her heart like vines, beautiful and suffocating. "This is crazy," she whispered, but she didn't pull her hand away. "Yes," he agreed, "love often is." The country estate's library was as far from the chaos of the disrupted wedding as Ilara could get without actually leaving. She'd insisted on speaking to Damien alone, despite Thomas's protests, her father's concerns, and Cecily's wide-eyed shock. Now she stood by the fireplace, still in her wedding dress, watching Damien examine the room with the careful attention of a predator assessing territory. "You can't just," she started, then stopped, pressing her fingers to her temples. You can't just crash my wedding and expect, what, that I'd run away with you, after 7 years of silence. Damien turned from the bookshelf he'd been studying, his expression unreadable. I expect nothing, I hope for everything, there's a difference. Stop talking in riddles. The words burst out sharper than she'd intended. You want the truth, fine, when you left it nearly destroyed me. Do you understand that? I spent months searching, wondering if you were dead or if I'd meant so little that you could just walk away. I had to rebuild myself piece by piece. Something flickered across his face, pain genuine and raw. I know. You know, she laughed bitterly. How could you possibly know when you weren't there? Because I watched over you. He moved closer, stopping when he saw her tense. Not constantly, not in a way that would draw danger to you, but I kept track through. Connections, I knew when you stopped eating for 3 weeks. I knew when you finally packed up the things you'd kept at my apartment. I knew when you met Thomas. The revelation should have felt invasive. Instead, it cracked something in her chest. Then you knew how much I hurt, she said quietly, and you stayed away anyway. I had to. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture so familiar it ached. Ilara, the transformation, it's not like the movies, it's violent, chaotic. I was a danger to everyone around me, especially to those I loved most. The bloodlust, the rage, the physical changes. I couldn't control any of it. So you protected me by breaking my heart. Yes, his eyes met hers, unflinching. I would shatter your heart 1,000 times over rather than drain the life from your body even once, and that was a very real possibility. She wanted to stay angry. Anger was safe, familiar, but curiosity was winning. Tell me what happened, the real story. Damien settled into a leather chair with inhuman grace, gesturing to the one opposite. After a moment's hesitation, Ilara sat, her dress pooling around her like a cloud. I was born human, he began. That much you knew. What I never told you was that my bloodline carried a dormant gene, a recessive trait that appears once every few generations. On my 25th birthday, it activated. The week before you disappeared, Ilara remembered, they'd planned a celebration that never happened. The week the change began, I started hearing heartbeats from blocks away. Sunlight became painful, food tasted like ash, and the hunger, his jaw clenched. The hunger was maddening. I knew enough to recognize what was happening. My grandmother had left journals, warnings. I had maybe days before I'd lose control completely. So you ran. I sought out others like me. There's a hierarchy in the vampire world, ancient and absolute. I found a coven, learned to control the bloodlust, discovered the extent of my abilities. He paused, and I learned that my particular bloodline made me something rare, a born vampire king, one of only 7 in the world. Despite everything, Ilara felt fascination stirring. What does that mean? It means I'm not just strong. I can command other vampires, establish territories, make or break covenants. It also means I became a target. Other kings wanted to eliminate the competition before I came into my full power. The first 3 years were just survival. The next 4 were building something stable enough, safe enough, that I could bring you into it without signing your death warrant. Bring me into it, Ilara repeated slowly. Into a vampire kingdom, as what exactly? Damien leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his gaze intense. As my queen, as my eternal companion, as my everything. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. You're talking about turning me, she said finally, making me a vampire. Only if you chose it. I would never force that transformation on you. His voice was fervent. But yes, eventually that would be the only way we could truly be together. Humans age, Ilara, they die, I don't. The math is cruel but simple. She stood abruptly, needing to move to think. Her reflection caught in the darkened window, a bride without a groom, contemplating an impossible choice. I have a life, Damien. Friends, family, a career I worked hard for. Thomas, who's been nothing but kind and patient. Do you love him? The question cut through her protests like a blade. She faltered. I care for him deeply. That's not what I asked. She spun to face him, finding he'd stood as well, closer than she'd expected. Love isn't always fireworks and grand gestures, she said defensively. Sometimes it's quiet and steady and safe. Safe, Damien repeated, as if tasting the word and finding it wanting. Is that what you want, safety? Yes, maybe, I don't know. She pressed her hands to her face. You're asking me to give up everything I've built, everything I know, to leap into darkness with you. Can you honestly not see how terrifying that is? I see it, his voice softened. And I see you, Ilara Hartley. I see the woman who once told me she'd rather live one true year than 100 false ones. I see the girl who danced in thunderstorms. When I look at you now in that dress preparing to marry a man who makes you feel safe, I have to ask, what happened to her? The words struck deep because they echoed her own fears. She grew up, Ilara whispered. She learned that storms end and you're left cold and wet and alone. Or she could learn to become the storm itself. He was close now, close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his eyes, catch the scent of him, still cedar and jasmine, but with something darker underneath. Close enough that her treacherous heart remembered every moment they'd shared. I'm not asking you to decide right now, Damien said quietly. I know I've disrupted your life spectacularly, but I'm asking you to feel something, to put your hand here. He guided her palm to his chest where a heartbeat pulsed slow and strong, and tell me truthfully that you feel nothing. His skin was cool through the fabric of his shirt, but the heartbeat beneath was real, slower than a human's but steady, alive in whatever way vampires were alive. And she felt everything. The jolt of connection, the pull she'd tried to bury, the sense of coming home to a place she'd been exiled from. Her body remembered him, the way they'd fit together, the electricity of his touch, the feeling of being utterly known and utterly cherished. Tears pricked her eyes. This isn't fair. I know. I was moving on, I was okay. Were you, his hand covered hers, holding it against his heart, or were you settling? Before she could answer, the library door burst open. Thomas stood in the doorway, dishevelled and furious, with Ilara's father and 2 security guards behind him. Enough of this insanity, Thomas declared. Ilara, step away from him. This man is clearly unhinged and I won't let him manipulate you further. Ilara stepped back but not toward Thomas. She needed space from both of them, from the competing gravity of 2 different futures. Thomas, I need time to think. Think about what? His voice rose. About running off with some lunatic who claims to be a vampire. Listen to yourself, this is our wedding day. A wedding she was walking toward like a funeral march, Damien interjected coolly. Thomas's face reddened. You don't know anything about us, about what we have. I know she doesn't love you. The words hung in the air like a curse. How dare you, Thomas breathed. Tell me I'm wrong, Damien's eyes flicked to Ilara. Have her tell me I'm wrong. All eyes turned to her. Her father's concerned, Thomas's desperate, Damien's burning with intensity. She opened her mouth, searching for the words that would make this right, make this easier. But the truth was already written on her face. Thomas saw it first. Something crumbled in his expression, the anger giving way to hurt. Ilara. I'm sorry, she whispered. Thomas, I'm so sorry. You deserve someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved. And that's not you. It wasn't a question, his shoulders sagged. It never was it? I was just convenient, safe. The word again, like an indictment. You're a good man, she said, meaning it. But Damien's right, I don't love you, not the way I should, not the way you deserve. The silence that followed was broken by her father's heavy sigh. Ilara, sweetheart, you can't possibly be considering this. This man shows up spouting nonsense about vampires. It's not nonsense. The words surprised her as much as anyone. I don't understand it all yet, but it's not nonsense. She looked at Damien, really looked at him, at the impossible reality standing before her in a perfectly tailored suit. I need time, she said firmly. Not years, not months, but time. Thomas, I'm sorry for the hurt I've caused. The wedding is off. I can't marry you when my heart is somewhere else. Thomas nodded stiffly, his pride clearly wounded. I hope you know what you're doing. He glanced at Damien with barely concealed disgust. I hope he's worth destroying your life for. Then he turned and left, her father following with one last pleading look. Alone again with Damien, Ilara felt the weight of her decision settling over her. I haven't chosen you, she clarified quickly. I've just unchosen him, there's a difference. I know, but Damien was smiling slightly. It's a start. 3 days later, Ilara stood on the balcony of a penthouse she didn't know existed until yesterday, overlooking a city that looked different under Damien's guidance. He'd given her space after the wedding that wasn't, but had left an address and a simple message. When you're ready to see the truth, come find me. Ready was a strong word, but curious, desperate for answers, unable to think about anything else, those she'd admit to. The penthouse was stunning, all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows, modern luxury with Gothic touches, and it was teeming with vampires. Not that she'd known at first, they looked human enough, but once Damien had taught her what to look for, the uncanny stillness, the way they moved just slightly too gracefully, the way they watched her with ancient eyes, she couldn't unsee it. "You're handling this remarkably well," said a voice behind her. She turned to find a woman who appeared to be in her 30s, elegant in a crimson dress, holding 2 glasses of something that definitely wasn't wine. "Am I?" Ilara laughed nervously, "because internally I'm screaming." The woman smiled, revealing delicate fangs. "I'm Seraphina, Damien's second-in-command, and trust me, the internal screaming is completely normal. I was human once too, about 200 years ago." 200 years, the number made Ilara's head spin. Does it get easier, wrapping your mind around it all? Eventually it becomes normal, then one day you realize normal shifted without you noticing. Seraphina offered one of the glasses. "It's just champagne, I promise. Some of us still enjoy human food and drink, even if we don't need it." Ilara took it gratefully, and Damien, does he eat human food, occasionally for pleasure rather than sustenance? We all need blood to survive, but there are ethical ways of obtaining it. Donors, blood banks, volunteers who enjoy the experience. We're not monsters from a horror film. Just immortal beings who drink blood to survive. Well, yes, but we have excellent dental plans. Despite everything, Ilara laughed. There was something absurdly comforting about Seraphina's matter-of-fact attitude. "He's been miserable without you, you know," Seraphina said more seriously. 7 years of building a kingdom, securing alliances, eliminating threats, all of it was for you, so he could bring you into this world safely. That's a lot of pressure. Love usually is. Seraphina tilted her head, studying her. "Can I ask you something? Why did you come here? You could have walked away, gone back to your human life, found another Thomas." Ilara looked out over the city, lights twinkling in the darkness. "Because I've been half alive for 7 years, and 3 days ago someone reminded me what it felt like to be whole. That's Damien's gift, I think. He makes you feel more. Everything's sharper, brighter, more intense around him." "Is that a vampire thing?" "No," Seraphina smiled. "That's a Damien thing. The Vampire King part just makes it more dramatic." As if summoned by his title, Damien appeared in the balcony doorway. He'd shed the formal suit for dark jeans and a black shirt, somehow looking even more devastating in casual clothes. "Seraphina, stop interrogating my guest." "I'm not interrogating, I'm befriending. There's a difference." But she winked at Ilara and glided away, leaving them alone. Damien joined her at the railing, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "How are you?" "Overwhelmed, fascinated, terrified, take your pick." All valid responses. He looked out at the city with her. "I know this is a lot. If it's too much, if you want to walk away, I'll understand. I'll disappear from your life again if that's what you need. And be miserable for another 7 years. If it means you're happy and safe, I'd be miserable for 700. The sincerity in his voice made her chest ache. She turned to face him fully. "I talked to Cecily yesterday, told her everything, want to know what she said." "That I'm insane and you should run." She said, "Finally, you've been a ghost at your own life for years." Ilara stepped closer. "She wasn't wrong. I've been going through the motions, pretending I was content, convincing myself that what I had with Thomas was enough. But it wasn't. It was safe and comfortable and completely hollow." Damien's expression was carefully neutral, but she could see hope flickering in his eyes. "I'm not saying I'm ready to become a vampire," she continued. "That's a decision that needs more than 3 days of consideration, but I'm saying I want to try this, us, whatever this is in your world." "You're sure, Ilara, this isn't just dating a vampire, I'm a king. There are politics, dangers, responsibilities. Other vampires will see you as either a weakness to exploit or a threat to eliminate. Your life will never be simple again." "Was it ever simple with you?" He laughed, surprised. "No, I suppose not." Then show me, she said, extending her hand. Show me your world, the real one, not the sanitized version. I want to know what I'm potentially choosing. Damien took her hand, his cool fingers wrapping around hers. Are you afraid? Absolutely terrified. Good, fear means you're taking this seriously. He pulled her gently toward the door. Come on, there's a council meeting tonight. You might as well meet the other kings and queens. Tonight, Damien, I can't meet vampire royalty. I'm wearing jeans. You're with me, you could wear a garbage bag and no one would dare comment. His grin was wicked, though Serafina would probably have opinions. The next few hours were the strangest of Ilara's life. The council meeting took place in a Gothic mansion that looked like it belonged in a historical drama, attended by 7 vampire monarchs from around the world. They ranged from a terrifying Viking-looking man named Magnus to a delicate Japanese woman called Akira who appeared 16 but spoke with the weight of centuries. And they all treated Damien with a respect that bordered on reverence. The Eastern King graces us with his presence, Magnus rumbled, and brings a human pet. My mate, Damien corrected, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. Ilara Hartley, you will treat her with the same respect you show me, or we'll have a problem, Magnus. The tension in the room spiked. Ilara held her breath. Then Magnus laughed a booming sound. Spirit, I like it. Very well, Eastern King. Your mate is under council protection as of this moment. Akira smiled serenely. It's been a long time since we've had a potential queen joining us. Welcome, Ilara Hartley. Your reputation precedes you. My reputation, Ilara managed. I'm just the human who captured the heart of our most reluctant king, Akira's eyes gleamed. Who made him fight wars and forge kingdoms just for the chance to return to her. You're already legendary, dear. The meeting itself was fascinating and overwhelming. Discussions of territorial disputes, blood supply ethics, managing the secret of vampire existence in the modern world. Damien was commanding and diplomatic, solving conflicts with a mixture of wisdom and barely veiled threats. This was him in his element, powerful, confident, undeniable. And he kept glancing at her, as if checking that she was real, that she was still there. After the meeting, as they walked through the mansion's gardens under a full moon, Ilara finally spoke the question that had been building. Why me? Damien looked at her quizzically. Why you what? You're a vampire king. You could have anyone, human or vampire, mundane or extraordinary. Why anchor yourself to someone like me? I'm just ordinary. He stopped walking, turning to face her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Ordinary, Ilara, you're the furthest thing from ordinary. Do you know what I see when I look at you? He cupped her face gently. I see a woman who rebuilt herself after heartbreak, who created a life even when her heart wasn't in it, who had the courage to call off a wedding in front of 100 people because she knew it wasn't right, who walked into a room full of immortal predators with her head high and didn't flinch. I flinched a little, she admitted. Barely noticeable. His thumb brushed her cheek. You're brilliant and brave and real in a way that most people, human or vampire, never manage. You make me feel human again, even though I'm not. You make eternity seem like a gift instead of a curse. Tears pricked her eyes. I'm still scared. Good, I'd be worried if you weren't. This is terrifying, it's supposed to be. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not strong enough for your world? Then we'll find a way to bridge our worlds instead. Ilara, I didn't spend 7 years building a kingdom so I could force you into a mold. I did it so we'd have options, so we'd have safety and power and choice. Choice, she repeated. What are my choices exactly? Damien took a breath. 1, you stay human. We find a way to be together, though it will be complicated and ultimately limited by your mortal lifespan. 2, you turn, but not now. We wait until you're absolutely certain, until you've lived enough of your human life that you won't regret the transformation. 3, you decide this is all too much and walk away. I let you go and never darken your door again. And which do you want? Honestly, I want option 2. I want you to have time to choose freely without pressure or fear, and then I want forever with you. His voice roughened. But what I want doesn't matter if it's not what you want. Ilara looked up at him, this impossible man who'd left to protect her and returned to claim her. This vampire king who'd wage wars for her but wouldn't push her into a decision. I want to start with tonight, she said finally. And then tomorrow and the day after that. I want to learn your world and see if I can find a place in it. Is that okay, taking it one day at a time? More than okay. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. We have time, all the time you need. You say that, but you're immortal. Your sense of time is probably warped. He laughed, the sound vibrating through her. Fair point, but for you I'll learn patience all over again. Damien. Yes. Kiss me, I've waited 7 years. I don't want to wait any more for that. His smile was brilliant and tender and everything she remembered. Then his lips found hers, cool and soft and perfect. The kiss was gentle at first, relearning, remembering. Then it deepened, 7 years of longing and loss and love pouring between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, even though he didn't technically need to breathe, Ilara was smiling. So this is what it feels like to choose the storm, she murmured. Regret it yet? Ask me in another 7 years. I will, and 7 years after that, and 700 years after that if you'll let me. Ilara thought about her almost wedding, her almost life, all the almost she'd settled for. Then she thought about Damien, infuriating, devoted, immortal Damien, and the impossible future he was offering. I'm not promising forever yet, she said, but I'm promising right now, and tomorrow, and we'll see where it goes from there. Right now and tomorrow, Damien repeated, pulling her close again. I'll take it. I'll take every moment you'll give me. And there, in a garden that belonged to vampires, under a moon that had watched over countless immortal love stories, Ilara Hartley made her choice. Not the safe one, not the expected one, but the real one. The one that made her feel alive for the first time in 7 years. 6 months later, she would attend her first council meeting as Damien's official consort, wearing a dress that made her look like dark royalty. 2 years later, she would make the choice to turn on her own terms in her own time. 5 years later, she would stand beside Damien as his queen, immortal and powerful and utterly herself. But that night in the garden she was simply Ilara, and that was enough. He'd said she belonged to him, that day he crashed her wedding. But the truth was more complex, more beautiful. They belonged to each other. And neither of them was letting go. Want more thrilling supernatural romance stories? Follow for more tales of love that defies death itself. If you want to watch the full extended stories, join my Patreon. The link is in the description below. Exclusive and uncensored episodes are available only on Patreon. Check the link in the description.